I was doing a session and I was absolutely gassed. And then I was thinking to myself, there must be a way to properly breathe between doing high intensity work. And then I thought, I know who I can call. I've got Liz Ho on speed dial.
Breathing in itself is a skill, and there's a way to do it really well and really efficiently, and there's a way to do it really inefficiently.
You've done a running set and coaches are always saying, don't bend over and put your hands on your knees. You need to stand up tall, hands behind your head, and breathe deeply. Myth or fact?
Holy crap, if I focus on this and I make it so much better, it opens so many more doors that I thought were kind of set, that I thought I couldn't change. There was a ceiling I always had to work with.
The best thing about breathwork is that it brings you into the now, into the present, so that you're more focused, more calm, and you've got to perform better because you've got a more quiet and relaxed mind, which allows you to unlock greater potential and greater performance overall.
When you do what we call more of a breakthrough style of breath work, you enter deeper parts of the body and also deeper parts of the brain. And then that is how kind of emotions can be processed.
Everyone who's listening right now, doesn't matter if you're in your car, on the tram, what you're doing, let's all take a deep breath in. And Liz, please walk us through it. Welcome to 40G. Liz Ho, welcome to the 40G podcast.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute honor and pleasure to be here.
Well, you have been a long-time listener, first-time caller, so it is an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Oh my God. Yeah, I think I stumbled. How did I find 40G? I think it was a beautiful product of the Instagram algorithm. I think it fell onto my feed and then I gave it a listen, and it just happened that it was maybe the second or third week that you'd started. And so I binge listened to all the episodes. I think I was deep cleaning the house and I thought, perfect, just put it on and have a full list. And it was great. And I was so hooked. And it's been wonderful to just continue listening to the different people you've had on, the different conversations as well. And I don't know, it's just been cool to, I think, learn about different perspectives for different athletes. But then also, I think, more broadly for women in sport as well, and other challenges that are being faced, which can translate out of this industry too, and just kind of like apply in a broader perspective as well. So yeah, when you messaged me, I was like, oh my God, for sure. Yeah, I'll take an episode.
Well, first of all, I haven't paid you to say that, but thank you very much. But I do remember messaging you because I've just been coming back from shin splints. I haven't been doing heaps of running. I was doing a session and I was absolutely gassed. And then I was thinking to myself, there must be a way to properly breathe between doing high intensity work instead of just doing cardio. So I was like, do I have to breathe in for 2, out for 1, or vice versa? And then I thought, I know who I can call. I've got Liz Ho on speed dial. So I think today's episode, it's going to resonate with everyone, right? Because we breathe naturally without even thinking about it. But breathing is such an important component of exercise, and we never get taught how to breathe. And how you breathe from, doing a 10K run is completely different to how you should be breathing on an AFL field. So today we're going to break down the myths, and I'm very, very excited to hear what the audience thinks and what they can learn from it. So shall we get straight into some myth busting around breathing?
Yes, dive on in. I'm ready.
Excellent. All right. Myth busting number 1. I'm gasping for air in games and feel absolutely gassed. That must mean that I'm unfit.
Definitely not. Absolute myth. I've met and worked with some of the fittest people. And when they lose control of their breath, it has nothing to do with their physical performance and their physical capability. Breathing in itself is a skill, and there's a way to do it really well and really efficiently. And there's a way to do it really inefficiently. And exactly to your point, it's not something we are ever taught how to do. And so if you've adopted a habit, maybe it's from the people around you, maybe it's from, like childhood factors. Did you have asthma growing up? Things like that really influence the way that your body naturally defaults to an inhale and an exhale. And that could be slowing you down or, taking away from the physical capability that you so clearly have as a very fit person or a very fit athlete.
Well, that's comforting to know for all the people out there who have been doing the extras on the cardio machines and they still feel absolutely gassed in the game. But I assume we'll get more into this, so hold your horses. Next question or myth to bust. And this is very popular at the moment because it happened just the other day at training. So you've done a running set, right? And coaches are always saying, don't bend over and put your hands on your knees. You need to stand up tall, hands behind your head, and breathe deeply. Myth or fact?
I'll answer this in two parts. One is the advice to take a deep breath, correct fact. That is definitely what you should be doing to slow down your system. The sense of don't kind of keel over, hands on knees, stand up straight. There's actually something that can be quite helpful about bending over, because when you do that, it takes the core stabilizing pressure off of your diaphragm, which is your primary breathing muscle. And so your diaphragm, yes, it controls how much you breathe, but it's also a posture stabilizer. So when you bend over, you take that secondary pressure purpose off of your diaphragm so it can just help you breathe. So it's kind of a half truth, half yes, half no. Do take a deep breath, but sometimes doing that position can help. I recognize the optics of it though, and it doesn't look great. If I think about if you're on a team and you see the other team doing that, you think that I've got an edge over them because they are absolutely gassed. So I do sympathize with how it can look and how you need to kind of keep that composure up. But keep the deep breath, find the good posture, yes.
Yeah, maybe a happy medium of bent over, hands on knees, but eyes up watching the game.
Correct. Like a predator gaze. And then that's all you have to do. Just breathe really slowly, really controlled, and just have that locked in focus. That's all you have to do.
Right. So I'll be sure to tell coaches that it is not a sign of weakness and bad body language. It is actually helping you breathe. Brilliant. Last one. Mouth breathing is always bad in sport, even when you're doing it at max intensity.
Oof, that is a myth. I am very much on the boat of nasal breathing as much as you can, but it's not an end-all be-all. If you do switch to mouth breathing, especially when you're at the end and you're pushing your max intensity, they tend to actually be intrinsically linked. So, myth.
Excellent. From those three things, I think they could be applied to just about every sport, every coach, and every training session. So already there has been plenty of value there. But Liz, I want to know more about you, who you are, what you do, and how you came to find Breathwork.
Yes, so I am a breathwork coach. I work with a lot of athletes and professionals to basically break their performance ceiling, whether that's physical, whether that's mental, and we do that through functional breath training. So depending on, I guess, how much people have dabbled in breathing and the breathwork space, there's probably a difference to what a lot of people see versus what I do on the day-to-day. Breath work, in a more traditional sense, you might see kind of someone lying down on a mat. They've got the classic like one hand on heart, one hand on belly, and they're following a particular sequence or a particular rhythm. That's more of a guided breathwork experience. What I tend to focus on is more of a breath training perspective. So it's actually looking at how you breathe functionally and trying to make it more efficient. It's trying to see how well you can keep your breath under control as levels of stress increase. And again, that could be mental, that could be emotional, but it can be a physical stressor as well. And so particularly in the athletic and the sports space, it's about understanding how as your body starts to fatigue, as you're working harder, as you're building more load and building intensity, how can you make sure that your breathing isn't impacting your capacity and it isn't impacting your limit? Again, going back to an earlier point you made, you can be incredibly fit and capable and that like physical output limit is extremely high. But your breathing could sabotage that and it could really cap what you're able to experience and how you're able to perform because you haven't looked at that aspect. And so it's about how do you train and build the strength of your breathing like you would any other muscle in the gym? How do you do that so that you can kind of continue growing and continue accelerating at the level and at the speed that you want?
So how did you come across breathwork? Because offline we were just speaking that breathwork's only been in your life for the past couple of years. So how did you come across it and what made you want to work in breathwork?
Yeah, so it's a wild story to think about. I first heard of, and tried breathwork in 2022. And that was actually for a mental health component. So again, the beautiful thing about breathwork is you can kind of enter it for many different reasons and for many different purposes. And so, especially a few years ago, at least in my world, breathwork was kind of something that appeared for personal development. And it was for, like unpacking a lot of emotional baggage. And so that was my entrance into it, wanting to kind of like work on myself, and get myself in a better headspace. And so, like a lot of people, I went on a retreat to Bali, and I thought doing a week under some palm trees would solve all my problems. And breathwork was part of, I guess that solution. And that was an incredibly profound experience, in the way that when you do what we call more of a breakthrough style of breath work, you enter deeper parts of the body and also deeper parts of the brain. And then that is how kind of emotions can be processed. So if anyone's seen a video on TikTok and you've got like someone really like having a really like big cry, that's probably what it's generally connected to. And so that was kind of my entrance. And that is how I first got into my own practice of breath work. And when I started to realize how impactful that was for me, I then realized I wanted to do some training. I wanted to learn about it, so that I could do it properly for myself. I thought it would be cool to maybe one day do it for others, but I never started it with the expectation to go there. And it's actually been really wonderful to see how it's organically grown as I've grown over the years. Because it really started off in more of that emotional capacity space. And then when it helped me work through a lot of that, it started to become a really practical tool. It was something that I could do 10, 20 minutes every single day in the morning before, I kind of went to work. And it helped me stay regulated. It helped me stay more consistent. That's actually probably a better word for it. Consistent in the way that I wanted to show up as a leader at the time, in my profession, to show up as a team player. I think about the people that I was working with being able to communicate better. When there was a lot of pressure coming from me, whether that was work, whether that was personal, how could I not lose it? And how could I continue showing up in the way that I wanted to? And so it was really wonderful to then see from, I guess, more of a nervous system level, how breath work was kind of increasing the size of my plate and what I was able to load onto it without freaking out. And then over time, that then translated into helping others do the same. I currently teach a couple of classes a week at a breathwork studio in Brunswick. They're called No Name Studios. And again, that's more of that traditional kind of guided breathwork experience. But through that, I was very, very blessed to fall into the orbit of a couple of athletes who, again, kind of joined breathwork originally for like more of a mental perspective. And then they were curious to see, hey, could this also work for my physical performance? Or they had actually started to already notice that I've actually been paying more attention to my breath during training or during games, and I'm noticing X, Y, and Z. And so that was such an organic pathway into the space I'm in now, which is understanding breathing as a functional skill is so fun to train, but it's also incredibly powerful. It doesn't take much because breathing, it is so often the first cone for everything that you do. And we all kind of instinctively know to come back to the breath, when we're feeling stressed. Either someone tells us to take a deep breath, or we just have that moment to ourselves before we go out and do something important. So we all kind of know, but I think it's about actually realizing that, holy crap, if I focus on this and I make it so much better, it opens so many more doors that I thought were kind of set, that I thought I couldn't change, that it was a ceiling I always had to work with. And so that has kind of been the transformation from something that was more, I guess, in the personal development world into something which is now very practical every day. How does it allow me to show up as the best version of myself? And that looks different to every single person, but knowing that your breath is something that you carry 24/7 and that you can always tap into it, you can always leverage it, that's such a powerful thing. And it gives you a lot of self-confidence because you always have that autonomy and you always have that agency and no one can take it away from you as long as you're alive.
It's incredibly empowering knowing that, as you say, every single person has breath. You don't have to pay to even go to breathwork classes. You can learn to control your breath, but obviously that's a great place to start. And it can have such an impact on so many different aspects of your life by bringing you back and being present in the moment, which I think from an athlete's perspective, that's one of our biggest things is that we have anxiety about the future in the game. We have anxiety or depression, whatever you want to call it, about the past, the mistakes that we've made. But the best thing about breathwork is that it brings you into the now, into the present, so that you're more focused, more calm, and you've got to perform better because you've got a more quiet and relaxed mind, which allows you to unlock greater potential and greater performance overall. You've said that you've worked with a few different athletes and it's opened a few doors for them. What are some of the benefits that athletes can get, besides the obvious, for putting more of an emphasis on their breath work during their training and in their game time?
So I've seen several different benefits, which have been amazing. And the cool thing is that with the breath, even if you enter it for a specific purpose, for example, you struggle with a lot of anxiety and you want to learn how to use your breath to kind of calm yourself down, whether it's on court or something like that, you will be able to do that and achieve that, but you will also notice a difference in your emotional capacity and being able to emotionally regulate better. You will also see a difference in your physical output and being able to recover faster between efforts, or be able to push yourself a little bit harder. So indirectly, even though you didn't mean to kind of hit all those other goals, you will anyway. And so I would say that overall, the themes that I see with athletes who make a consistent effort to work on their breath is a mental capacity. I talk about when you take a breath and you consciously learn how to breathe, you give yourself a gap. And in that gap, it's about understanding the environment and what's your initial reaction versus what is the response you want to have. And so that gap of awareness from a mental perspective is incredibly important because that allows you to maybe pivot your behavior or pivot a story or a narrative that you're telling yourself internally, which is then translating externally. So there's a very big mental component of that, creating an awareness. There is a concept of stress and anxiety and being able to kind of not necessarily make it disappear, because I think as a human, we all kind of have those thoughts, but it's about how quickly can you let them move on? How quickly can you stay detached to them so that they don't take up space and that they start growing bigger in your head? So there's an ability to kind of stay level-headed. But then from a physical perspective, when you start training the breath, you learn how to control pacing of breath better, which then influences pacing of your heart, so your heartbeat, which then influences your actual duration and length of your physical output and your physical capacity. So we see a difference in particularly speed performance as well. You can use your breath to push harder for longer and push faster. If you take like a 5K time, it's been really cool. I had one of the guys I worked with, he is originally from Adelaide and we were doing a training block together. And when he went back home, he did a 5K park run and he wasn't even trying to go any faster. And that wasn't one of the focuses we had when we were working together, but he hit a PB. It was incredible. And he was like, I didn't even feel as tired and I wasn't even working that hard and I wasn't focusing on it, but it's because that underlying breath changes. So there's a speed aspect as well. There's a recovery standpoint, being able to switch your body into what we call more of the parasympathetic rest and digest state. It allows your muscles to kind of move into that repair mode so that they can kind of repair faster before you kind of put them under more stress and more exertion again. It improves sleep as well, being able to get that beauty rest, which is so important for your body and for your mind, and actually have the same amount of sleep, but then wake up actually feeling refreshed. I even sometimes have some clients who talk to, I didn't get as much sleep last night, but I feel better, or my recovery score is better. It's because when you change the way you breathe, you can actually like allow your body to sink deeper into that kind of rest state as well. And then the last one I would probably say from the physical perspective is just knowing that you can kind of reach the next level. It's a little bit broad when I say that, but I think in the sense of when you learn to control your breathing and the cascade it has on a cellular level in your body, it just means that energy can be diverted to whatever else you're doing. So if you're in the gym and you're doing sets and you're doing strength, more energy can go toward your muscles as they're kind of igniting that force versus trying to keep it on your breath, because breathing as itself is an action. Like breathing itself takes energy, and it takes some of the oxygen that you're doing to breathe in. And so when you have more control of that, it allows you to, I guess, divert resources to the thing that you are doing, which then allows you to do more of that and to do it at a higher quality and a higher level.
So it's not only physical, there's a lot of mental benefits as well with breath work. And we're also just chatting about earlier how it's becoming far more mainstream within the sporting realm, because we're starting to see the benefits, and it's less spiritual and less like, you know, if you do breath work, you're part of a cult and you're actually just worrying about your health and well-being, which is a great transition. Don't get me wrong. But if we look at the practical side of things now, so our listeners generally are athletes themselves, all levels. What can we start doing now to improve our breath work and by default improve our performance?
So I think the first thing that you can do is just start becoming consciously aware of the way that you breathe. Awareness is so powerful. Awareness is also kind of the first step. It's almost like step 0. You can't really do anything without awareness. But I think one of the first points I always talk to when I meet with athletes is what we call the mechanics of breathing. So it's understanding, how do you take a proper, good, nourishing, deep breath? It sounds really basic because you have been breathing for your entire life. But the thing is, because no one teaches you how to do it, you perhaps have adopted habits that aren't efficient. Maybe they're slightly dysfunctional and they're impacting how much oxygen you're actually breathing in. So I think the simplest way to almost kind of give people a checklist of, am I breathing well? One, posture is really important.
Mm-hmm.
To breathe, you have to create space. So if you're hunched over, it's really hard for your body to do that. A really quick way is if you take one of your hands, if you think about putting your pinky down to where your belly button is, your thumb in a full kind of handspan, it should sit just below your sternum. And so if you're kind of slumped over, you'll naturally feel that handspan shrink. And so that can be a really good way to check that your posture's all right. The second one is breathing through your nose. So what that allows is a slower breath, which can actually move further into your body and helps engage your diaphragm, which is your primary breathing muscle. So your diaphragm, it's kind of like a parachute mushroom cap shaped muscle, and it sits just underneath your lower ribs. And so what happens is when you breathe in, it expands and it kind of contracts and flattens out, and that creates a space for your lungs to inflate and take in air. And so when you talk about a diaphragmatic breath, you can check as an athlete, okay, when I breathe, do I feel it lower in my kind of like diaphragm or belly region? And do I feel it almost like a barrel inside of me? Do I feel it grow in every direction? Because your diaphragm, it attaches into the back of your spine as well. And so you're able to create space in every single direction. And so this sense of, okay, if I have good posture, if I breathe through my nose and I can find that lateral 3-dimensional breath effectively, that's the first check. Is that the kind of hallmarks of a good breath? If your breath is shallow, if you find that you tend to like breathe into the upper chest, if you stand in a mirror and you breathe and you can see your shoulders moving quite aggressively, often it tends to be linked to a mouth breath as well. That is restricting how much oxygen is actually being delivered into your body and to all of your muscles. So you're doing all of this work, but there's very little ROI. And so that if you take nothing else away from this podcast, if you are able to come back to those foundations of that is what a deep breath should feel like and should be experienced as, that will fundamentally change your life, because breathing is not just something you do in sport, it's something you do day to day. And that's the benefit, is when you learn how to do this properly, it applies for every single breath that you take. And as humans, we take over 20,000 breaths a day.
Okay. Everyone who's listening right now, doesn't matter if you're in your car, on the tram, what you're doing, let's all take a deep breath in. And Liz, please walk us through it.
All right, beautiful. So just do a quick posture check. Consider that handspan. I like to think about a single balloon string that's kind of pulling me up. So you want to be tall but not tense. Keep the body soft. A good inhale starts with a great exhale. So when we start, everyone just breathe out. You can breathe out through your mouth or through your nose. This doesn't really matter, but let all of that air go. Then through the nose, instead of breathing up toward your forehead, try to visualize breathing back toward your ears in that direction. So take a deep breath in. Maybe feel that expansion toward the lower ribs. Maybe they start to gently flare out. And then when you feel full, when you reach that capacity, you're not forcing yourself, gently let the air go and let the breath just kind of fall out of you, because it's a very passive act on the exhale. And that is what a deep, nourishing, slow breath should feel like. The effort is on the inhale, because that's when your muscles engage. And so that's when you kind of really want to make the most of that space you create. And then the exhale is relaxing. The exhale doesn't require any muscular movement. And so that's why people talk to extend your exhale, because it slows the heart rate down, because it's more relaxing for the body, because it doesn't have to do any work.
Okay. So all this that we learn, is this what we should be practicing off the field? So then by default, we do it on the field, or is it something that we sort of need to be practicing on the field as well?
Great question. I tend to approach this as a bit of a, you have to walk before you can run. So if you've never considered your breath before, it's something that you will have to practice off field, often starting stationary. So the sense of, okay, I'm going to start breathing lying down. That tends to be the easiest, because there's no additional pressure on your breathing muscles. And then that progresses to, okay, can I keep that same form? Can I keep that same technique as I breathe when I'm sitting up? Because now there's a gravitational component. My diaphragm has to work a little bit harder to keep my core stable as well, because I'm sitting. And then translating that to, okay, can I keep that same shape and technique as I'm standing, as I'm walking, as I'm running, as I'm lifting, as I'm being tackled by someone else on another team? And so having this aspect of, when you do what we call more of that kind of like conscious training of this is what it feels like, and then over time building that habit, and then changing the default of what your body does when it's breathing. And then you will see that naturally translate into training. Of course, when you have those moments, if you're doing a recovery set between efforts, come back to that conscious training in the moment to practice, okay, even as I'm fatiguing, even as I'm feeling really gassed, what does it feel like in my body? Does it probably feel more challenging because I'm more tired? Does it feel different? Is it actually harder to get space lower? And my default is to still breathe into my chest. But to have that awareness, it then allows you to make a change. And that is how you get good at anything. It's the practice of it as well.
For the athletes who are more anxious, and they get anxious before games, they're quite anxious, during the games, what is the best breath work that they can do, whether they've only got, say, 5 to 10 minutes in the change rooms before they go on? What are some breathwork techniques they can apply to their game?
So kind of looping back to just a point I touched on earlier, the sense of the exhale being more passive and more relaxing because it takes less work, that is what you capitalize on when you're feeling kind of stressed and feeling anxious. So people talk to extending out the exhale. You can do a double length of your exhale to inhale. So you could breathe in for 4, breathe out for 8, and something as simple as that. Your heart rate slows down on an exhale. So to do that over the course of 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you're actively spending more time lowering your heartbeat. And so that can help kind of bring you down. It's also great because often, at least from my own experience, when I feel anxious, my mind tends to go very fast, and I'm kind of thinking about what's next and what's the thing after that and what's the thing after that. And so by following a count, it gives your mind something to do, which is a nice distraction versus kind of catastrophizing in the moment. But then as you're kind of distracting yourself, you are still having a physical effect on the body because you're extending that exhale. So a kind of 1-2 ratio is always a good one. And the second one is what we call a physiological sigh. So this was kind of like a term coined by Andrew Huberman, but it's basically 2 inhales through the nose and then a sigh out the mouth on the exhale. And encouraging on the exhale, like allow your body to relax, let the shoulders drop, because when you're stressed and when you're tired, they tend to kind of creep up toward the earlobes. When you take in that initial inhale, come back to that shape of a lateral breath, a 360 breath. Get in as much air as you can. And then that second inhale, it'll be a lot smaller because you've filled yourself quite a bit. But it's that act of a kind of, and just repeating that. Even if you only have 30 seconds, if you can squeeze in 3 of those, like 3 long, intentional, deep physiological sighs, they'll immediately send a different signal through your body. And that does wonderful things for levels of stress and anxiety.
I've done a few breathwork classes at the Breath House, and every time I've left, I've felt like everything is almost in slow motion. And I always thought, imagine if I could feel like that on the field. Like it would just be so beneficial in terms of you've got so much time to think and you don't make those rash decisions that, you know, ultimately end in a mistake. So if you could take that onto the field, I know it's a bit more challenging when you're absolutely fatigued, like myself, but it does just make you think that there's more that we can tap into inside of us already instead of always having to think that we need to be training extra skills, this, that, and the other. Like we have a lot of power within our bodies. We just need to be aware of it, understand it, and know how to use it.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think I think about some of the incredible athletes I've had a chance to work with. And like, I have so much sympathy for how much you have to do, and just like what fits into your schedule and your routines and your week. And the thought that there's always something more that I could be doing and that, I should also add this. And then your morning routine is, you know, becoming 4 hours long. That in itself can be quite taxing mentally, to think that I feel like I'm doing so much and yet I'm also still never doing enough. And what I love about breathing is, yes, at the start, if you've never focused on it before, it will take a bit more of a time investment and an effort investment to kind of get yourself going. But once you do that, it can be integrated into what you already do. You are breathing anyway. It's about understanding how you can optimize it and make it more efficient. And in that way, you can train your breath at the same time that you're doing sprint drills, or that you're at the gym, or that you're doing recovery. In an ice bath, it's a classic example, kind of pairing the cold with the breath. And then outside of that, you're breathing in your natural day-to-day. It's when you're in the car. It's having those moments to yourself. It's just something that never has to sit separate from what you're doing. And I think it's such a wonderful thing because in a way you are always training it. It's just about understanding, are you training it well? I don't breathe perfectly all the time. It's really annoying because I'm always aware of it. I'll be sitting on the couch and I'll be like, posture is bad. And then I'll have to reposition myself because I've got a little annoying voice in my head that goes to fix it. But in this sense, it's knowing that you can always remind your body how to breathe better. Your breath changes on so many different factors. If you have more caffeine on a particular day, if you have a really good night's rest, you tend to be able to breathe better. If you're ill or you're recovering from a cold, energy levels, mood, the way that you breathe changes every single day. And so in that way, it always becomes a learning opportunity. And it's about understanding, okay, even when I'm not feeling in top performance, how then can I breathe in a way that's more beneficial to me? And that's the beauty of any form of practice, right? Every day shows up a little bit differently. And it's about understanding, how can I be the best version of myself today in this moment? And the same thing happens with breath. And so when you learn how to do that and you build a conscious practice of, this isn't something that I have to set an extra hour aside for all the time, integrate it, take what you have, what you already do, and get creative with it, have fun. You can play with it. It's actually quite wonderful because a lot of like clients I work with, they've never trained breathing before. It's actually almost exciting because it's something new, and I don't know, they get to kind of see new ways and explore how it can fit into what they already do, into their existing routines, things that work for them, things that don't, moments and opportunities where they feel like, oh yeah, I noticed that for some reason, this particular environment makes me feel more stressed because I notice a pattern in the way that I breathe changes differently here. And that awareness, again, step 0, it then allows you to create a different response if you want to and if it serves you.
Definitely. I've started implementing it into my morning routine, and I've been leaving my phone outside of the bedroom because I'd wake up, I'd look at my phone, I've got 1,000 notifications, 1,000 emails saying what I need to do. And I was already in that fight or flight stage early in the morning, which would just, carry on to being a really shitty day, and I'd be stressed and anxious. So I've started leaving my phone outside of the room. And as soon as I wake up, I sit up and I do box breathing for like 2 minutes.
Lovely.
And
that's my favorite.
That's not, yeah, it's brilliant. And it literally just calms you so much. And then I go off and do, a little bit of journaling or meditation or whatnot. I do understand that some people, they wake up super early. They might be shift workers. They don't have a lot of time before they need to get their life sorted to get to work. But we've always got 2 minutes. You can literally do it, as you say, in the car. You can do it in the shower even. I've been doing that as well. So it's a matter of, like, as you say, integrating it into your day. Doesn't mean adding something in, just like be more aware of little opportunities that we have. And even if you're at a work meeting and you're feeling a bit stressed, the best part about breath work is that you said it already, we're already breathing. So you can be doing this whilst you're in the meeting or before your presentation, and no one's going to know.
So many times, and no one knows. I've been in my head being like, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4.
You might get some funny looks if you start doing the physiological sigh or the psychological sigh, whatever it was called.
People think you'll have something to
even
say.
Still, absolutely. So sport is obviously very different. We use different energy systems. We need different ways of breathing for different sports and different intensities, etc. So I want to do 3 quick scenarios on how you should best breathe in each scenario. Lovely. Alrighty. So if we're talking about endurance sport, what is the best way of breathing, say if I'm going and doing a 10K run?
So when we think about endurance, it's about efficiency of breathing. That's probably the best way I'd put it. It's about understanding how can you create a rhythm so that you're using less energy on the action of breathing. Because basically, if you can control your breath rate, everything is so much easier downstream from that. Are you in control of your breath, or is your breath controlling you? When you are like in a park or on a walk and someone kind of runs past you and you can hear when they're kind of panting, you can hear when it's irregular, you can kind of gauge that they're probably reaching their end capacity, they're reaching their end limit. Same thing applies to you. When you start finding your breath is a little bit more erratic, that it's becoming a little bit looser and you don't have that influence and that control over it, the best thing you can do is come back to, can I control the pace? Whether is it as simple as following a count? Because finding that rhythm, that will allow you to, if you think about like your body and your nervous system, you're steadier versus kind of like going up and going down. And I guess on a deeper level, if we even take a step back and you think about training scenarios for endurance sport, what you are really wanting to do is build what we call your tolerance to carbon dioxide, your carbon dioxide threshold. So, forgive the nerd in me, but when you, if I come back to like the chemistry of it, when you breathe,
yes, we love it.
It's an exchange of oxygen and CO2. You largely, when you inhale, you're trying to get in as much oxygen as you can. When you exhale, you're releasing carbon dioxide as a waste gas. But I say that kind of like, with the grain of salt. Your need to breathe, it's actually dictated by how much carbon dioxide you can tolerate, not how much oxygen you're lacking. So what I mean by
Interesting.
that, if I asked you to like take a big breath and you held it for as long as possible, you'd kind of get to this point where you're feeling really uncomfortable, and then you'd probably at the very end when you break, you'd have a bit of a, and then you'd kind of like gasp and get yourself back. That little that exhale you do, that is the oxygen that's still in you. And so you had more technically inside of you, but it's because your body and the level it reached for the carbon dioxide that was building up inside of you, it was too uncomfortable. And carbon dioxide is incredibly important for your body. It's a very big component of how oxygen is actually delivered to your cells. But that is what triggers your brain to be like, I need to take another breath. And so if you're able to increase your tolerance to CO2, it means that you don't have to breathe as often because your body has a higher capacity for it, which means that it takes longer to feel that panic, to feel that stress. And if your body doesn't have to breathe as much, it doesn't have to work as much in that domain. And so to be able to train your threshold, it means that you can tolerate more in your body, which one increases your duration of the endurance sport and how long you can actually go for. But again, with the downstream effects of CO2, it has incredible benefit for you to be able to deal with more of that inside of yourself. It is, as I mentioned before, it's a very big component of actually getting oxygen delivered to your muscles. So the more of it you can have, the more oxygen can actually get into all your fibers and everything that's good for you. It is it's a vasodilator, so it helps with blood circulation. It balances the pH in your body to like support recovery and all of these things. So to actually increase that threshold, it will help you build stamina, not just from the endurance perspective itself, but for the natural health of your physical body and the way that comes together. So for an endurance sport, I guess like an immediate thing that you can do and something you can actively focus on is keeping that rhythm and keeping that efficiency of breath. But then more of, I guess, like a long-term and a training piece is, can you build that CO2 tolerance and that CO2 threshold? And a big component of that is nasal breathing while you're training. So people talk about going for a run and trying to breathe in and out through your nose the whole time. That is harder because it's more uncomfortable because your nose holes are smaller than your mouth hole, which means that it takes longer for that process of air to come in and out, which means that you have to hold more CO2 in your body. And that is uncomfortable. But that is also the point. And so over time, your body, in its incredible ways, adjusts to that new threshold, which means you're able to hold more for longer, which then allows you to push a bit further, push a bit longer, increase your 5K park run time without even trying. It's because your body is learning how to be more efficient with what it's got inside of you in the moment. And that is the downstream effect from training something like that to then seeing it in application in the endurance sport itself.
Right. So you're saying bring back the mouth strip and the nasal strips when people are running. I remember when I first saw someone running with the
Not sponsored,
mouth strip on. Oh, here we go. For those listening and not watching, what have we got here?
We've got little mouth strips. So I personally use these for sleep, but you can very much put these on. Put these on over your gab when you're going out for a run. Or on
you
the
might
bike.
get a few looks, but
yeah,
that's
correct.
all part of it.
You know what? You will be flying past them anyway because you'll be so much faster because of your breathing. So it doesn't matter.
I do get around the nasal strips, but especially when I've got the flu and I can't breathe, they're brilliant.
Yeah, they open up the nose holes. Like the body is very much use it or lose it. And so if you're not used to nasal breathing, kind of like more naturally, you will find it's harder to breathe in through this cavity, which kind of has the same feeling when you're recovering from a cold. In that way, you just feel a little bit more blocked. And so again, like that's part of the discomfort. But the more you use it, the body is realizing, hey, this is the way that they're wanting to get air in and out. So we'll adapt. And it does become easier as well. I will say the first time, and honestly, it still happens, whenever I go on a run and it's nasal breathing, just bring tissues because unfortunately a byproduct is that you produce more like fluid through your nose because it's working harder. So just bring a little tissue for unfortunately the snotty situation that it can be. So just putting it out there.
A small price to pay.
Correct. It does wonderful things for you, so it's well worth it.
So when you're running, do you want to breathe and your nasal breathing? Is it pretty even? So like say 2 in, 2 out if you're doing that sort of zone 2, zone 3 run?
So a really simple way to think about a breath and how you want to adjust it, if you think about the length of your inhale versus the length of your exhale. If your inhale equals your exhale, it's like a balanced breath. So if you think about a box breath, they're the kind of same length, your just system's kind of calm and chill and regulated. If your exhale is longer than the inhale, remember that has more of that relaxation effect. So that is going to help kind of like slow you down, slow your heart rate down. So sometimes on a run, I will do that when I know that, for example, I've just kind of like gone up a hill and my body has worked a little bit harder. I want to bring myself back into that more even state. So I will purposefully extend my exhales so that I can get myself into that more level zone. If you extend your inhale, again, there is effort required on the inhale. So your heart rate actually increases on the inhale. So sometimes at the start of the run, to warm myself up, I will breathe in for 4. And running is great because like it has a pace to it. So I'll just like run with my steps basically. So I will breathe in for 4 and then I'll exhale for 3. And just that slight elevation in my heart rate, it's like a nice warm up for my body. And then I get into a rhythm and then I kind of fall into a balanced breath. I don't always count my breath all of the time, but focusing on your breath can be really good, especially when you're really feeling it and like it's uncomfortable and you have a bit to go. It can be great to come back to the breath because that is your anchor to the present moment. And again, it helps you keep yourself in check, to keep you in control of that breath rate and that breath efficiency too. So that's like a really quick, I guess, tool you can use is, do I want to keep inhale equals exhale? Do I want to extend the inhale or extend the exhale based on like what is actually going to help me?
That's really interesting. I did not know that. So I've definitely taken something away there. One of the best examples of this, I feel, is when you're swimming. And I know this myself because I used to panic and take a big breath and then I was always gasping for the next breath. But one of my coaches said, like, take in just a little breath and then you'll find. And like, it's actually so true because then I would relax and I felt like I didn't crave as much oxygen and I could take more strokes without breathing. And my mum, when she tries to swim, she's like, I can't swim because I can't get enough breath. And I've tried to teach her that as well. And look, I'm not going to say that she has succeeded just yet because she hasn't done enough swimming. But it's obviously what you're saying there is the same principle, right, with swimming.
Absolutely. And I would say, that kind of like phrase you used is, I would take a big breath. A lot of people are very good at taking a big breath, but when they do it, if you watch them, they'll kind of go and for anyone who's not watching, basically what you saw is like the air go into my chest and my shoulders rise and I breathe in through my mouth. And so that is a big breath, but again, it's not a deep breath. And so you're not getting into that lower portion of your body. You're not using your diaphragm as your primary breathing muscle, which means that you're not kind of getting the air lower into the body. And the majority of gas exchange happens in the lower third of your lungs. So you actually want to pull that breath as low as you can because that is how most of it gets into your body. So again, it's a sense of, I'm doing all the work, I'm taking these big breaths, but it's not doing much for me. It's because it's not going where it needs to go. And so anyone who naturally kind of breathes a little bit more shallow and tends to find their breath gets trapped in the upper chest, they might speak to, I feel like I can't take a full breath. I feel like I am out of breath quite a lot, even when I'm not, doing anything super intense. It's because you're not getting enough air into where it needs to go. And also the fact that because your diaphragm is your primary breathing muscle, that is the muscle that's meant to be used. But because breathing is so important, if you're not doing it properly, your body's not going to stop breathing. And so if you have developed, yeah, absolutely. And so if you have developed a habit of breathing into your chest, your body is going to try to compensate and make the most out of that movement. But those muscles aren't meant to be used for breathing. And so because you're using them more, you're overworking them. So then they get tighter, it gets more uncomfortable. And then it kind of, it's a negative self-fulfilling cycle because You're breathing into the chest and the shoulders, which you're not meant to be using. There's less space, so you're breathing more. And then they're being overworked, so they're fatiguing. So then you start cramping, and then maybe your posture gets worse, which then makes it harder to breathe properly low into the belly. So then it keeps going. And so it's this sense of I'm doing all of this work for very little reward. And so being able to come back to that original concept, what is a long, slow, nourishing, deep breath, that changes everything. It really, really does. It's so simple, but it's surprising how difficult it can be to kind of come back to it and to keep it up when you're not conscious of it or when it's not your default habit.
So key takeaway, use your diaphragm, pull the breath down all the way because you're already doing the hard work when it's up in your chest, but you get not zero reward, but not as much reward, I'm sure.
Correct.
Brilliant. So next scenario is more for our high intensity sports like your AFLs, your soccer, netball, whatever it might be. So let's say you're on the court and you've just done a big sprint effort. For this purpose, say that you've got 5 seconds before you need to do another effort. What should you be doing with your breath in that small gap before it's time to go hard again?
Okay, so if I think about high intensity effort sports, the best thing you can do is learn to develop what I call nervous system fluency. So in the way that you're breathing is directly tied to your nervous system. If you think about it like a spectrum, you have kind of two main buckets. You tend to go from what we call the parasympathetic, that's the rest and digest kind of repair, slower state of deactivation. And you move all the way up the spectrum to the sympathetic, that's your more activated stress state, your fight or flight. There's some form of perceived threat or danger, so your body switches on to basically keep you alert. There's a bit of a stigma saying that it's kind of like bad to be stressed and to be in this kind of like fight or flight. It's not necessarily bad. We have it naturally inbuilt for a reason. It's because all the things that happen in our body, they're good for us. The danger is when you get stuck there. The danger is actually when you get stuck at either end. And so nervous system fluency, the way I describe it, is the ability to dance along the spectrum and be as fluid as you can, to know and kind of trust yourself that you can use your breath to generate up or come all the way down based on what you need in the moment. So in that particular instance, if you have just finished a sprint set and you have 5-10 seconds to kind of come back down as quickly as you can, it's about, okay, how can I use my breath to bring myself into more of that parasympathetic state? So go for a physiological sigh, go for an extended exhale, go for maybe against the coach's wishes, go hands on knees, take that pressure off the diaphragm and come back to a deep, nourishing breath. It's because all of that, it's sending a signal into your body that, okay, in this small window, this gap we have, bring yourself down. Alternatively, it could be a session where you are about to do a high intensity effort and maybe you need to gear yourself up. And it's about how do I use my breath to actually increase my heart rate, to actually bring a bit of a bit of stress into my body, because that's going to mobilize me and that's going to energize me. And so from a training perspective, it's this kind of like, it is almost the peaks of the up and down versus a kind of flat consistency, because the faster you can move between those states, it's just using your energy as wisely as you can. I think about one of my footy girls. We were talking about how in kind of like her ideal gameplay, what are the different points where she has an opportunity to kind of like use her breath? At what moments does she have time for herself versus kind of having to communicate, be with the team and everything? And it's about understanding, can we not wait until quarter time for you to have a chance to kind of reset your loop? If you're kind of up, how quickly can we kind of get you to come back to your best self at as many times throughout the game as possible? Because if say, for example, for her, if she could only reset that recovery loop at quarter time, she only had 3 opportunities, basically, versus if she could do it at every stoppage, she could have so many more chances throughout the game. And so her ability to train that and to be like, okay, I'm feeling really elevated, I'm feeling really fatigued. How can I slow my heart rate down, bring myself back to my version of baseline as quickly as possible? it meant that she could conserve energy rather than staying in that heightened stress state when she didn't need to, because that is a very taxing space to be in energetically. And then similarly, if there was a day where she was feeling really lethargic, just didn't have the kind of energy that she normally would, how can you bring yourself up so that you can rise to the occasion and get yourself where you need to be? And the speed at which you're able to do that and the efficiency to do that, it just means that you can continually put yourself in the best position possible to play at your best for what that particular moment needs. So I feel like for high intensity sports, it's about kind of being able to pivot where necessary, because there can be so many surprises that come your way. And that nervous system fluency means that you can adapt in that space as well. So for anyone who wants to train that, it's understanding whether it's during games or during sessions, when you have those opportunities, play with your breath. Try to, whether it's, again, I'll come back to the example, but a physiological sigh or an extended exhale, notice how quickly you can use that to bring yourself back to baseline. It'll probably feel really hard because when you're really puffed, slowing the breath down feels really uncomfortable because all your body wants to do is just breathe. And so it's about how can you kind of sit in that air hunger, that tolerance, and that discomfort, but control it down. And that is a skill you're training to be able to do that and then shift your body into a different state as quickly as possible, whether down or whether up.
That's absolute gold. And this is the time to try it while we're currently in pre-season. Try it in the training sessions and make the most of what training sessions we have and try it in high intensity situations. Try it when you're doing, your sort of longer cardio based efforts and just see, I guess, what works for you is probably the main key takeaway there as well.
Absolutely. And I think what you've touched on is just such a key component. What works for you? Every athlete is different and there is no, unfortunately, cookie cutter approach. There are foundations and frameworks that you can always come back to, but it's about making it as easy as possible for yourself, like path of least resistance, right? If breath training is something new that you want to envelope in because you hear of its benefits, you've listened to this and you're absolutely sold, and you want to try it for the first time, do it in a way that feels easy and feels bite-sized versus being like, I have to change my whole routine. I have to breathe in this particular pattern, in this particular rhythm, in this particular count all the time. That's way too much and it's not sustainable. It's about understanding, okay, when are opportunities where I feel like I've got a moment to myself? And what do I actually need in that moment? If I take an example, I think about two of my girls as like a contrast. One of them, we were talking about pre-game rituals and what she does beforehand to kind of get herself into the best state possible. For her, she wants to go out feeling calm, level-headed, really centered, because for her, that helps her stay cool for the entire game on court. And so it was almost about bringing her system down because naturally beforehand, she was probably like a little bit more anxious and has that kind of like pent-up energy and anticipation that comes. Switch, I think, to one of my other girls. And we were talking about her pre-game ritual before footy. And she's like, as we get closer to that first siren, I need to make sure that I am matching the energy and I'm matching the kind of environment around me. So she actually wants to feel more gassed up. So the approaches that they have in terms of using their breath are completely different. And if I swapped them, it would not have worked for each of them as athletes because they need different things in the moment. And so it's about for you. And again, this changes on different days depending on your mood and depending on your energy levels. Maybe it's really easy to kind of bring yourself back down to baseline. Or maybe it's really hard to kind of energize yourself more than usual. But it's about understanding for you and what your version of performance looks like and how it fits into what you already do as part of your routine. What is the best way that you can use your breath and optimize it to support that state that you want to be in as well? And that is different for everyone. And so it's understanding, and this is like part of the kind of like work that I do, is figuring out, take away the noise and what people tell you it should be, and all the things that like, this is the gold standard of how it should be done. What works for you? Because I think one of the things that I try to hone in with every athlete is like, I can so appreciate that with everything that you are told and all like the stuff on the internet and the research that comes out, you're almost like sometimes I feel taught to ignore your intuitive sense. And you are the only person who is you, and you know what feels good in your body, and you know what your version of flow state is. And so it's about how do you bring this in to support that and breathing in such a beautiful way, because again, it's something that you always carry with you. You always have, you can always come back to it. And you can do it while still being like kind of cognizant of what's happening around you. So like if you're out on the field and you're walking back to your starting point and you've got 10 seconds, you can do a breathing practice, but still kind of like make eye contact, check with like midfielders, give like a little thumbs up to make sure everyone's on the same page. You don't always have to kind of go out the back for 20 minutes and sit in a dark room on a mat. And so it's that ability to realize, okay, what works for me and what gets the best version of me possible. And that's what I love about it, is that it's so custom, and yet it's so powerful, because regardless of what you need in the moment, it's going to work. Your breath, there was an analogy I heard once, and it was so wonderful that I've kind of like, used it and passed it on for good measure. But basically your breath, it's effectively a beat. It's like a kick drum to a song. And that kick drum controls the beat of your heart, which then influences your circulatory system, which then influences the beat of your brain and your brainwave and your brain frequency. But it all starts with breath. Your breath is part of what we call the autonomic nervous system, which is kind of like your autopilot. It controls everything that you don't really have to think of. Your heartbeat, your digestion, sweating, things like that. Your breath is the only thing that is the kind of bridge. It's both conscious and unconscious. It's automatic and it's controllable. And so it means that you have an outlet at every time. If you want to flick it on, you can think about this and you can influence this, and it has the downstream effect into all of those other factors. And that is why it's so powerful. And again, your body will naturally kind of lean toward this first, to take a deep breath before a penalty kick, before a really important moment. It's about realizing why your body does that first. And then it's like, okay, the fact that then I can influence this, how can I do it more? How can I make it better? How can I improve it? Not just during sport, but for every other aspect of my life. Because the way that you breathe, it will affect your entire well-being holistically, because you breathe in every single aspect that you do.
Wow. So important. And I guarantee if you think of your favorite athlete and you watch them before they take a kick or a shot, the first thing they do is take a deep breath. Like you can literally see them take that breath and it resets them so that they're able to execute. So
Correct.
Just goes to show the best of the best are doing it. And we're always looking for these 1% things that we can implement. And the breath is something arguably far more important than the 1%. But if you tap into that and use it to your advantage, you could be well ahead of your competition.
Absolutely. And just consider the fact that breathing is how you get in oxygen, which is your fuel source for your muscles, but also your brain. So think about mental clarity, being able to make decisions under pressure, to problem solve when you're in the moment, to communicate properly with your teammates. All of that comes back to just how well can I fuel my body? And yeah, it's wonderful to see breathing and breath training starting to kind of get more out there, especially in sport and the athletic space, because it is so important. Like I fully believe that this is just another foundational pillar, in the same way that you kind of have strength and conditioning, you have nutrition, you have mindset, and you have sleep. All of that holistically is kind of like agreed. These are the non-negotiables. Breathing is one of them as well. And the more that people realize it, it's cool, because they just realize this is such a key component, and it fits into everything else so perfectly. It just clicks into the most beautiful puzzle.
Yes, absolutely. Now, before we wrap up, we ask every guest, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your 16-year-old self?
Oh, so since I've listened to so many episodes, I thought about this. So
You knew this was coming.
I did.
I should have mixed it up.
I did.
Just keep you on your toes.
So look, it's really funny, because when I was 16, I never saw myself in this space because one, I had never heard of breathwork, but also I was not a sporty child. Sport was not a part of my life. I think I'm the first person on your podcast to probably say that. And so the fact to end up here is wild. I think about 16-year-old me and what I was going through at the time. And one I think is that it gets better, but also that don't believe the current limit that you see for yourself. And that was across lots of different things, but knowing that I thought, I was only going to be good at X and I would never be good at Y, or that I could never break out of my mold or break out of my container. And also I think being a female and being a woman, this sense of almost like limiting myself in a way, and realizing as I look back over the years that there was always a surprise around the corner, and so much of the time I surprised myself, and knowing that I'm going to keep doing that, and I'm probably going to keep doing that, for the rest of my life. I hope I keep doing that for the rest of my life. And so this sense of don't feel like where you are now is how it's going to be forever, because you really do have so much more influence than you think, and you can stretch yourself and you can push yourself. And you will be able to, I think, do and experience a lot more than you think. That's what I would say to my 16-year-old self. Don't cap yourself, Liz.
And just breathe.
Yeah, correct. Just breathe.
Just breathe. Love it. Well, because you know these questions so well, you'll know the next question is, why do we need to keep more women and girls in sport?
So this has actually been really wonderful, and I want to credit it back to 40G in a way, because I learned so much through this podcast and what you shared from your own experiences, and then the conversations you've had with such incredible guests. Because I was late to the sport and I was late to the industry and kind of diving into this world, which I still am. Like, in so many ways, I'm so green to how much goes on in sport and women in sport. It's been so wonderful to be a beginner in my adult lifetime and kind of learn as I'm going. And it's incredible. And to see how much of a difference it actually makes, that is the proof of why it's so important to champion women in sport and to have these kinds of spaces and these kinds of conversations, because I see it in the incredible athletes I work with, not just women, but the sense of it allows you to practice the very human skills that you need for the rest of your life, of communication, of teamwork, of building resilience, of learning how to take a loss, how to lose gracefully, how to win gracefully, and recognizing that at the end of it, all of it's a game. All of it's a game. Life is a game. And in that way, make it fun, make it beautiful, make it a dance. And the more women who get to experience that firsthand, and from a young age as well, I wonder, I don't do regrets, so I wouldn't change anything. But I think about what might have been different if I had been a lot more involved in sport when I was young growing up. And I believe it would have, very much changed how I developed for the better. And so I think the more that girls can be exposed to that, it's only going to be an advantage, and there can only be more gained. There is nothing that's lost from getting more girls into sport from a younger age, because what they will learn, they'll take for the rest of their lives, and it will, I think, help develop them into better versions of themselves.
I think the most powerful thing about you is that you probably haven't had the sporting background that a lot of guests have had, which has been such a fresh perspective. And honestly, it's needed, and just goes to show that this podcast is not for the elite athletes. It's for every girl and every woman who wants somewhere to belong. And it's not about the game, it's about the community, the skills you say, and everything else that's brings with it. It's just the vehicle, but it's so, so important. And every girl and woman deserves to be in sport, deserves to feel seen, and deserves to be part of something bigger. So Liz, thank you so much for telling us how to breathe in sport and all the benefits that it brings. I know I'm going to go back and re-listen to my own episode so I can learn more again of what you've said. And it's so practical, the stuff that you've been saying. It's something that we can all implement straight away right now. I'm going to go and do some breath work and think posture up. And as I say this, I'm looking at myself and looking like a prawn. So posture up, use your diaphragm, and yeah, you can change your breath to what you need. There's no cookie cutter approach. The sort of key takeaways from what you said is that if you want to warm up or sort of increase your arousal, deeper breath in, quicker exhale.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Good. If we want to keep it steady, equal inhale and exhale.
Yes.
Correct. Excellent. And finally, if you want to calm down, you need to have a extended exhale because that will calm everything.
Gold
Is that right?
stars.
Brilliant. All right. Well, I'm glad I've learned something. And quickly, where can the listeners find you?
So Instagram is probably the best place. My username is _Liz_ho, H-O. And yeah, I share information on breath training for athletes in particular, and just more knowledge around this more like functional side of how you can make your breathing more efficient so I can serve you in every aspect of life, really.
Incredible. Well, listeners, happy breathing. And Liz, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You've been listening to 4TG, where the future of women's sport is being shaped, one story at a time. If today's episode hit home, subscribe, rate 5 stars, and send it to someone who needs that push. Stay in the loop at 4TG_podcast or on 4TG.com. We'll see you next time. Same mission, same movement. This one was for the girls.